If you had one of every banknote, how much would that be worth? Hi, I'm Cautex, and I like taking ideas that I think are mildly interesting or entertaining and then putting way too much effort into those ideas to see if they get any more entertaining. One night, after a few too many drinks, I remembered this time that I was traveling and would be passing through multiple countries with different currencies. Specifically, I was going to need two different currencies, and so I went to a currency exchange to get what I needed. The thing that I remember most about this situation was just how long it took for the person working to do these exchanges. I don't know why it took him so long, but what I do know is that it just took far longer than I would have anticipated, and this is the point when the alcohol took over and made me wonder. If I had asked for more currencies, would this massive increase of time that it took to do the exchanges continue? Could I create a denial of service attack just by asking the currency exchange to do the exact thing that they're supposed to do? This logically led me to wondering, well, what if I asked for all of the currencies? I thought this was funny, and so I started thinking about, well, how could we optimize this? And the best strategy to me seemed like to ask for one of every denomination for each currency. Now, because alcohol, I arbitrarily decided that asking for coins was lame, and therefore asking for the banknotes, aka the paper money, would be funny. Thus, I had the question that I posed at the start of this video. How much would it cost me to get one of every banknote that's in circulation? After my feeble attempts to Google the answer failed, I concluded that, well, I could just figure this out myself, as the process seemed pretty straightforward. Just get a list of all the banknotes in use, and then multiply that by the exchange rate. Easy peasy. Well, not quite. You see, it turns out that there isn't a singular list of all of these currencies plus their denominations that you can easily get to with Google. There are reference books that contain this information, but I wasn't about to order a book. I needed my answer now. So I went to the most trustworthy and up-to-date source that exists, Wikipedia, as there is a page dedicated to maintaining a list of all of the currencies that are currently circulating. There is just a tiny little problem with this list. It's absolute garbage. The button to sort alphabetically by currency name doesn't work at all, and as I'd find out later, there are a number of currencies that aren't in use anymore that are on the list. So, to try and remove this garbage, I just copy-pasted the entire table into Excel and then did a bunch of filtering and sorting and removing all the duplicates, and eventually, I had an alphabetical list of all the currencies in circulation. All I had to do then was, well, gather all the denominations for each of those currencies. Now, previous experience has taught me that my data entry skills when I'm drunk are really bad. So, I left this for somebody who's good at data entry, the sober version of myself. And then I went to bed. After waking up and looking at the fact that I was going to need to get the denominations of all of the banknotes used for 169 different currencies, I considered trying to write a small program to just grab it off of Wikipedia. But of course, there were problems with this idea. The first problem is that there would be a ridiculous amount of formatting work that I would need to do just to make whatever I grabbed usable. Second, I'm trash at programming, so I figured it would actually take me longer to build the script than just enter all the denominations in manually. So I turned on some music and got to work. And then I was immediately stopped, of course, because literally the first currency on my list, the Abzakian Aspar, which only has one banknote for 500 Aspark, if you read the page for this currency, the country where this currency is legal doesn't even use it, and they basically just make the coins for collectors. It also says nothing about if they're doing the same for the banknotes, but my guess was that it's probably in the same boat. But it was a currency, and it's on the list saying that it's in circulation, so, well, at this point, because it was the first one, I said, screw it, let's leave it in. And so I got back to my data entry. About 3 minutes later, I hit the next problem. You see, on the Wikipedia pages for these currencies, some of the banknotes are labeled as rarely used. And well, this shows up on a lot of the pages, and if you were to actually read the page, it would usually give you some information or some hints as to why it was considered rarely used, but sometimes it just said, hey, this is rarely used, but I don't know if that's true or not because I've never heard of a lot of these currencies because I am an uncultured American. Also, I just didn't want to have to read that much, so I just said if it is labeled as being rarely used, I just won't add it to the list because I want to be able to ask for all of the banknotes that a currency exchange could reasonably expect to have, even though most currency exchanges don't have all of the currencies in the world, which meant that this was an entirely arbitrary decision, just like pretty much every other decision I made with this project. Next, while this didn't really cause any problems per se, there is an issue with the fact that some of the currencies that are on this list don't have banknotes. Or they have their own coins, but they use the banknotes of some other currency, such as the Pitcairn Iron Dollars, which uses the New Zealand dollar as its banknote. Next, some currencies, despite being in the list of circulated currencies, aren't actually being used. For example, in Zimbabwe, their circulated currency is the RTGS dollar, but if you look at the page, it says that they only used it from June 2019 to March 2020. At which point, Zimbabwe just said, screw it. Just use international currencies again. Then there's also Venezuela, which because of hyperinflation, they just keep making a new currency that basically chops off all the zeros from the last one. And they literally just did this again on October 1st, 2021. Anyway, once I had all of that done, I next had to contend with finding the exchange rates for all of these currencies. Because my brain said, hey, it would be funnier if you could have these calculations done in real time with the current exchange rates for all of the currencies, I figured, well, I could just use a Python script to pull all the rates from some website, as that would mean I could do this every day and then always have that accurate calculation. The only problem was that all three of the websites that I looked at want you to pay for access to this data, and they usually want a lot of money. So I said, maybe not, and I just entered all the data in manually. This means that my numbers would only be accurate as of the time of me writing this script, which was in early October 21. Now, if you happen to know of a website that gives free access to their API and has the exchange rates for all of the currencies that are in use, let me know. Once I had entered all of the exchange rates, I took the denominations of a given currency, added them all up, and then multiplied that by the exchange rate. This would tell me how much it cost to get one of every banknote of that currency. After doing that for each currency, I added up all of those totals, and then I finally had the answer to my stupid question. If I had one of every single banknote currently in use, then that would be worth $15,207.15. At this point, I figured that since I have this fancy spreadsheet, I might as well try to get some more entertainment out of it. So here's some bonus facts. There are 972 banknotes currently in use around the world being used by 165 currencies. The average number of denominations per currency is 5.9, and the currency with the most number of unique banknotes is the Congolese franc, which has 17 different denominations. Now, if you ignore the questionably included Abzakian Aspar, the currency with the least number of denominations is the Artsakh dram, which only has 2 denominations. Now, if you assume that all 972 of these banknotes have the same thickness as a US dollar, if you stacked them all up, then you would have a money tower that's, well, only 4.209 inches tall, or 106.92 millimeters. Now, I'm sure that there's a technical term for this that's proper, but if you add up all of the denominations of a currency, that tells you the number of what I'll call money units for that currency. So, for example, if you add up all of the various dollar bills, that's a 1, 5, 10, 20, 50, and 100. Added all together means that having one of each bill is worth 186 money units, aka dollars. Now, with one of every denomination, I would have a total of 3,854,737 money units. The currency that I would possess the most money units for is the Vietnamese dong, which has 10 denominations, and if you had one of each, that's worth 888,500 dong, which is equivalent to $39. The median cost to purchase one of every denomination for a given currency was $50.35. The currency that would be the most expensive to buy one of each denomination would be the Swiss franc, which would cost just under $1,500. In addition to having one of the fewest numbers of denominations, the Artsakh dram is also the cheapest currency to purchase all of the denominations for, which would only cost 3 cents. Now, let's say that you're not a high roller and you can't afford to drop $15,000 to get the full set. Let's say you only had $100. How many currencies could you buy all the denominations for with that amount? The answer is 19 of them. And you could do it for $99.77. And this would get you a total of 111 different banknotes. Now, obviously, currency exchanges will have some amount of markup so they can make a profit. So in reality, you're not going to get all of these for $100, but at least you could probably get most of them. Now, I am sure that there are tons of other mildly interesting pieces of trivia that you can extract from this spreadsheet and then annoy people with by pretending to be intellectually superior to them. So there is a link to this spreadsheet in the description of this video. If you find any interesting stats or tidbits, share them in the comments. Also, I probably screwed a lot of things up, and I know basically nothing about foreign currencies. So if you see any glaring mistakes, please let me know in the comments. Lastly, an obvious question for you to be asking right now is, was this effort worth it? Oh, of course not. I could have made much better use of my time. But I was entertained, and so that's good enough for me. Hopefully you were too, but as always, tell me why my opinions are dumb. And of course, do the things to feed Mr. Algorithm in all the various ways that he likes to be fed, but just know that this is a massive departure from the usual videos that I make on my channel, and I don't plan on making content like this regularly. This is really only intended to be a one-off. I only made this video because I was having fun, and I figured that there might be 13 or 14 weirdos out there who would also be entertained by this. So, to all 13 or 14 of you weirdos, thank you for watching.